Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to thank you for the discussions in the forums last week about the oracle versus prophet thing. Um, it does my old heart good when I pose a question like that and students get hold of it and start doing research and start coming back and talking to each other and having actual discussions about the results of the research. That's when the magic really happens, and that's what frankly keeps me going in this business as long as I've been in this business. I very much appreciated some of the directions that you all took with your discussions, and I think you will benefit from that practice in critical thinking. I was actually after something a slightly bit more simple. I was thinking about point of view and narrative voice, and really the distinction between oracle and prophet for our purposes is, with an oracle, the deity actually takes control and speaks through that person. The prophet uses his or her own words. They may be inspired by some external force, but the words you're hearing are words the prophet, him or herself, has chosen. By the way, there is a female prophet in the Bible, the prophetess Huldah, Huldah. And so, for our purposes, in terms of considering the literary point of view, whether the words are actually the actual words of the deity coming through the oracle's mouth, or whether the prophet or prophetess chooses the words that they're putting down deliberately, it makes a difference to the point of view, of course, and that's really what I was trying to tease out. But thank you for the directions you all went. Yes, an oracle can be a place, but an oracle is also a person. The best example of this is the noted oracle at Delphi in Greek mythology, where the place was the oracle. It was a vent in the earth of some kind, but also the priestess who presided over the oracle and who delivered the oracular words was also called the oracle. So to visit the oracle at Delphi was to visit both the place and the person, and the two were sort of kind of inseparable. Of course, again, what I was really after for our thinking was the difference in narrative voice between whether the words actually come from the deity, they are the deity's words as in an oracle, or they are the prophet's words as in prophecy. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly was this idea of apocalypse. We're now getting into apocalyptic material, and you will have read in Gable what that's about. You don't need me to explain it to you. But you're going to find these interesting images of restoration. Apocalyptic material, excuse me, always has this idea of restoration of somehow, and so you get this image that rides through a lot of this material about this person who's going to rise up and restore Israel in some way. This is the word Meshiach, which becomes the Greek word Messiah, and what it means is anointed one, and it has to do with the practice of pouring holy oil on the head of the king to indicate this is the anointed one, this is our king. And so the person, the sort of thread that runs through this material of this person who's going to arise and do either one of two things. Either they're going to restore the throne of David at Jerusalem, and physically restore the kingdom and become the king on the throne, as in the Arthurian legends. And of course that's where a good bit of the Arthurian stuff comes from, is that motif. Or else someone who's going to in some other way restore the nation, either spiritually or culturally or ideologically, like a charismatic leader who won't necessarily be a king, but will be a spiritual leader of some kind. So this metaphor of this leader who's going to rise up and restore everything is dependent upon whether the person is talking about physical restoration of the kingdom of David in Jerusalem, or whether they're talking about the cultural, ideological, psychological, emotional restoration of the nation. So those metaphors of that charismatic leader are going to sort of break down fairly neatly into those two categories. And so if you're looking at this metaphor and you're trying to place it, just think, what is the person actually going to do? What is the prediction of the actions that this person is going to take? And then it'll be fairly easy to think a little bit about it. Okay, so enjoy the reading this week. I know there's quite a bit of reading, which is why I'm not going to burden you with a bunch of lectures and stuff. But we will have some discussions in the forum. And I hope you have a wonderful week. We're getting towards the end. We've got one more paper to write, and that'll be it. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.